picture this. It's 2015. You're inside the MIT Media Lab. I mean, this is one of the most prestigious high-tech research labs on the entire planet.
Absolutely. The pinnacle.
The walls are glass, servers are humming, and the air just has that smell of, ozone and ambition.
Right.
And you're a graduate student there named Joy Bolamwini. You are brilliant, you are driven, and you are working on the absolute cutting edge of what's next. Social robotics, facial recognition.
The kind of tech that's supposed to completely redefine how we interact with machines. It's really the holy grail of human-computer interaction.
Exactly. So you sit down in front of a robot. This machine, it's equipped with all the latest computer vision algorithms.
Yeah.
Its whole job is to track a human face, to lock eyes with you, to register your presence.
Mm-hmm.
Joy sits down. She looks right into the camera. She smiles. And nothing.
Just silence. A dead stare from the lens.
The machine just stares back. Blankly. It doesn't move. The lights don't come on. It simply does not register that a human being is sitting right there in front of it.
And she must be thinking it's a bug.
Of course. She's an engineer. She knows code breaks. So she reboots it. She tries again. Still nothing. She checks the lighting, moves around. Nothing.
And this right here is where the story takes a turn that, it sounds like some kind of bad science fiction, but it was absolutely real.
Yeah. Out of just sheer frustration, or maybe this sinking suspicion, Joy reaches into a drawer and she pulls out a prop. It's a plain white plastic mask.
The kind you'd see in a cheap horror movie or something.
Exactly, like a Phantom of the Opera costume. She puts this white mask over her own face, and immediately the robot snaps to attention. It tracks her. It follows her movements perfectly.
Because the machine didn't see a person. It wasn't looking for a person. It was looking for a pattern it was told was a person. And that pattern, based on the data it was fed, it was white.
Joy Bolamwini is a dark-skinned woman. And the machine failed to see her face because of her skin tone, but it recognized a white plastic mask instantly. Now, this is not a scene from a Black Mirror episode.
Nope.
This is a real event that exposed this huge crack in the foundation of our entire digital age. And it poses a question that should keep every single person listening to this awake at night.
It really should.
If the machines we are building to run the world, to hire us, to police us, to diagnose our illnesses, if they can't even see us, how can we possibly expect them to treat us fairly?
That is the defining question of our generation, I think. We're moving past that era of just asking, does the tech work?
Yeah, right.
And we're starting to ask, who does the tech work for? We aren't just talking about glitches today. We're really talking about the ethical soul of the digital era.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. I'm your host, and today we are tackling that invisible architecture that governs our lives. We're going to be dissecting Chapter 9 of Dr. Joseph H.Schuessler's brand new book, Emerging Technologies and Innovation Strategy, an information systems approach for the digital era.
It's a vital text, really, for understanding not just the how of technology, but the should. It's essential reading for anyone who's about to step into the IT field.
And before we go any further, I want to give a specific welcome to all the students at Tarleton State University's Dr. Sampak College of Business. We know you're listening. You are the future CIOs. You're the product managers, the founders who are going to be sitting in those boardrooms making these huge decisions. So consider this your cheat sheet.
Yeah.
This isn't just theory. This is the playbook for how to avoid the kinds of scandals that can destroy companies.
Listen closely. I mean, the difference between a successful tech launch and an absolute PR nightmare often comes down to the very concepts we're discussing today.
It really does. So before we unpack how a white mask completely changed the industry, I have a quick request. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this deep dive right now.
Please do.
Seriously, do it now. We are dropping insider knowledge on how to navigate these ethical minefields of IT. You want to be the leader who spots the crisis before it happens. You want to be the one who saves the company's reputation. Stick with us.
Yeah.
And check the description for the full source notes and resources to help you ace your courses.
Think of it as career insurance. You really don't want to be the one trying to explain to the board of directors why your brand new AI just insulted a customer.
No, you do not. So what's our mission today? We're looking at this double-edged sword of innovation. We have 4 massive pillars we have to get through.
Right.
First, AI bias and algorithmic fairness. That's the whole white mask story. Second, data privacy in this age of what's called surveillance capitalism. Third, the digital divide and tech equity, so who gets left behind. And finally, global sustainability and the environmental cost of the cloud.
The goal here is really to shift the mindset. For a long, long time, the Silicon Valley mantra was move fast and break things.
Right.
The new goal, the sustainable goal, has to be move thoughtfully and build things that last.
Okay, let's go back to Joy Buolamwini and that white mask.
Yeah.
Unpack the technical side of this for me. Why? Why did a robot at MIT, I mean, presumably built by some of the smartest people on the planet, fail to see a dark-skinned face?
Well, it wasn't magic, and this is really important. It wasn't that the robot was racist in the way a human is racist. A robot doesn't have intent.
It doesn't have feelings.
It has no feelings, no history. It really just comes down to the core mechanics of machine learning. So to train a facial recognition system, you feed it thousands, maybe millions of images. You tell it, this is a face, this is a face, this is not a face.
This is the training data, right? Labeled data.
Correct. Now, if the data set you use to train that model is, say, 80 or 90% light-skinned men, which for a long time was the standard for these benchmark data sets.
It's like labeled faces in the wild or something.
Exactly like that. If that's your data, the mathematical model learns that a face has certain contrast features, certain lighting patterns, and geometries that are associated with light skin.
So it creates this mathematical definition of a face that is just incredibly narrow. It's like teaching a child what a fruit is by only ever showing them red apples.
That's a perfect analogy.
And then you show them a green pear and the kid just says, nope, that's not a fruit.
Exactly. It overfits to the majority data. So when Joy sat down, her face didn't match the statistical probability map the machine had built. It wasn't a glitch in the code logic. The system was working exactly as it was trained.
It just wasn't trained on the real world.
Not at all. It was trained on a tiny slice of the world that the developers just happened to have easy access to.
And Joy coined a term for this, didn't she? The coded gaze.
Yes. It's a brilliant play on the male gaze from cinema theory. The coded gaze means that the unseen bias of the programmer, or, the bias that's just inherent in the data set, is reflected in how the AI sees the world.
Right.
It's a reminder that algorithms are not neutral. We like to think of math as this pure, objective truth, but an algorithm is really just an opinion expressed in code.
That's a bumper sticker right there. An algorithm is just an opinion expressed in code. But let's take this out of the lab because, if a robot ignores you, that's annoying. But if an algorithm denies you a job, that's life-changing. Let's talk about that Amazon hiring tool. This is a classic case study that every single business student needs to know.
This is the absolute nightmare scenario for any HR department. So a few years ago, Amazon wanted to automate the screening of resumes.
Which makes sense. They get tens of thousands of applications a week.
A week. It's physically impossible for humans to read them all. They wanted to find top engineering talent and do it efficiently. So they built an AI.
And the logic, on paper, it seems sound. You have a pile of historical data, say 10 years of resumes from people you hired and people you didn't.
Right.
You feed all of that to the machine and you just say, find me more people like the ones who succeeded here.
It's just standard predictive analytics.
Yeah.
You train the model on what success looks like. But here's the problem. The history of the tech industry, and Amazon's hiring in particular, was overwhelmingly male.
Okay.
So the model analyzed all this data, and it found a very strong correlation. It basically concluded men are successful candidates, women are not.
So it literally learned sexism.
But surely they didn't program it to look for male or female. I can't imagine a developer writing a line of code like, if gender equals female, then delete.
They didn't. And this is the really tricky part, especially for the students listening. You can remove the gender column from your spreadsheet. You can try to sanitize the inputs.
Yeah.
But the AI is a pattern matching machine. It is much smarter than that. It found other ways to identify gender. It started penalizing resumes that had the word women's in them.
Like captain of the women's chess club.
Exactly like that. It also downgraded graduates from 2 well-known all-women's colleges.
So it found proxies.
Precisely. It found linguistic patterns that correlated with gender. Maybe the action verbs men used on their resumes were different from the verbs women used. Amazon's engineers, they tried to patch it, but every time they fixed one proxy, the AI would just find another one.
Wow.
It was so deeply baked into the historical data that they eventually had to scrap the entire project. They just gave up on it. That is a terrifying thought. You think you're buying efficiency, but what you're actually doing is automating discrimination.
Yes.
You're taking a human bias, you're encoding it into software, and then you're running it at scale at the speed of light.
And because it's a computer, people trust it more. We have this thing called automation bias. If a human recruiter says, I just didn't like that candidate, we might ask why.
Sure, you'd question it.
But if the computer assigns a score of 42 out of 100, we tend to accept it as this objective fact. We assume the computer saw something important that we missed.
And the stakes just get higher and higher when we move from employment to, well, to freedom. Let's look at the criminal justice system, the Compass algorithm. This is something that determines actual time behind bars.
Yeah, this is a system that's widely used in the U.S. court system to predict recidivism. That's the risk that a defendant will commit another crime. Judges use this score to help decide on things like bail amounts, sentencing, or even parole.
So a low score means you might go home, and a high score means you're more likely to stay in jail.
That's the idea. But some investigative journalism from ProPublica, they analyzed the scores. And what they found was that the algorithm was falsely labeling Black defendants as high risk at nearly twice the rate of white defendants.
Twice the rate.
Twice the rate. And conversely, it was labeling white defendants as low risk, even when they then went on to commit more crimes.
Okay, so let's pause on the technical why here again. I'm assuming the algorithm didn't have a race button as an input. How did it end up being so racially biased if race wasn't even a variable?
It comes right back to proxies and the nature of the data. The model uses inputs like zip code, employment history, family criminal history, even just the number of interactions with police. And in a society with a history of things like redlining, segregation, and the over-policing of minority neighborhoods, all of those data points can serve as proxies for race.
So if you just happen to live in a zip code that's heavily policed, you're naturally going to have more interactions with police.
Exactly.
And the data sees more arrests, and it just assumes more criminality.
Exactly. The data reflects the policing habits, not necessarily just the crime rate. The algorithm takes that historical inequality and it projects it into the future. It creates this dangerous feedback loop.
How so?
Well, if the algorithm says an area is high risk, you send more police there, which in turn generates more arrest data, which then confirms to the algorithm that it was right all along.
Wow. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This leads us to a specific spotlight from Chapter 9 that I found, absolutely fascinating and frankly disturbing. It's about healthcare.
Yes.
This is a study published in the journal Science back in 2019 about a massive commercial algorithm used by hospitals all over the country.
This is maybe the most instructive example for business leaders because it wasn't about malice. It was about a bad business metric.
Okay.
So hospitals use algorithms to manage population health. They want to identify the sickest, most complex patients so they can give them extra help, like a dedicated nurse, more checkups. It's called high-risk care management.
Which sounds like a good thing. It's preventative care. You want to catch problems early.
It's a great thing.
If you have the sickest people, you save lives and you save money in the long run.
Correct. But the developers had to define sickness for the computer. How do you tell a computer who is the most sick? They decided to use past healthcare costs as the proxy variable for health needs.
Okay, I can see the logic there, in a boardroom. Sick people go to the doctor more, they get more surgeries, they take more prescriptions, so they cost more money. High costs must equal high sickness. It feels like a logical correlation.
It does. In a perfect world, yes. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in the U.S. healthcare system.
Right.
And sociologically, we know that Black patients have historically had less access to care. They might face financial barriers, a lack of transportation, or even systemic bias where, say, doctors take their reports of pain less seriously and order fewer tests.
So as a result of all that,
As a result, a Black patient might be very sick, but end up spending significantly less money than a white patient with the exact same condition.
oh, I see where this is going. The algorithm looked at the spending data.
And it essentially said, oh, this patient isn't spending much money. They must be healthy.
Oh, no.
The result was that the algorithm assumed Black patients were much healthier than they actually were. The data showed that at the very same risk score, Black patients had 26% more chronic illnesses than white patients.
26%. That's massive. That's not a rounding error.
It is huge. And the practical outcome was that healthier white patients were effectively cutting the line to get this extra help, while sicker Black patients were being ignored because their cost didn't trigger the alarm.
That is the very definition of a systemic failure. But there's a silver lining here, right? The story actually has a resolution.
It does, and this is the tech for good pivot. This wasn't, malicious intent by the developers. They were just blind to the sociology of it all.
Right.
When researchers audited the system and they pointed out this flaw, they worked with the developer, they removed cost as the primary variable, and they replaced it with actual health metrics lab results, active diagnoses, the number of medications.
Things that actually measure health and what happened.
The bias dropped dramatically. The percentage of Black patients who were flagged for that extra help more than doubled. It corrected the disparity.
So the lesson here isn't AI is evil. It's more like AI needs supervision.
Precisely. It teaches the critical importance of algorithmic auditing. You cannot just deploy a system and walk away. You need diverse teams, sociologists, doctors, ethicists, not just coders, to ask the hard questions.
Like, what are we actually measuring here?
Exactly. Are we measuring health or are we measuring spending?
That is a huge takeaway for the students listening. If you're a product manager, you have to ask, what are we using as a proxy? If you can answer that, you might find the bias.
And then ask yourself, does this proxy mean the same thing for every single group of people? If the answer is no, you have a problem.
Okay, let's pivot. We've talked about how AI sees us, or, fails to see us. Now I want to talk about what AI knows about us. We're moving to the second pillar, data privacy. We always hear that phrase, data is the new oil.
I prefer the counter phrase, data is the new asbestos.
Oh, I like that. Explain that one.
Well, think about it. Oil is a resource. You find it, you refine it, you burn it for energy. It has value.
Sure.
Asbestos was also considered a miracle material. It was in everything. It was fireproof. It was cheap. But then we realized that if you mishandle it or if it leaks out, it causes cancer. It's toxic. Data has that same toxic potential. If you hoard it and it leaks, or if you use it unethically, it can poison your entire organization.
And we have to talk about the catalyst for this big shift in thinking.
Yeah.
The Cambridge Analytica scandal. It feels like ancient history now in 2026, but looking back, that was the moment, wasn't it? That was the big wake-up call.
It was the watershed moment for anyone who is maybe too young to remember the details. Back in 2016, a political consulting firm called Cambridge Analytica harvested the personal profiles of 87 million Facebook users.
And most of those people had no idea. They never signed up for it.
Right. They used a loophole in Facebook's Graph API, so one person would take some silly personality quiz app.
Yeah, like, which Disney princess are you?
Exactly. And that app would scrape not just your data, but the data of all of your friends.
So my cousin takes a quiz about which Harry Potter house are you, and suddenly my data is in the hands of some political firm.
That's exactly what happened. And they didn't just steal the data to sell email lists. They weaponized it. They built these psychographic profiles. They determined if you were neurotic or open or agreeable, and then they targeted voters with these hyper-specific manipulative ads and misinformation that was designed to trigger their specific fears or their biases. It was psychological warfare waged through social media.
The fallout from that was just massive.
Facebook, well, Meta now was hit with a $5 billion fine by the FTC. But the money was almost less important than the cultural shift. It shattered the illusion that online was some separate world. We all realized that our digital exhaust could be used to manipulate our real-world democracy.
It brings up the privacy paradox. This is a term from the textbook that I think everyone can relate to. We all say we value our privacy. If you survey people, 90% will say, I'm worried about my data. And yet,
a new app pops up. It asks for your location, your contacts, and your microphone. And what do we all do?
we click allow?
We click I agree on a 50-page terms of service document we haven't read a single word of.
So why do we do that? Are we just stupid? Or are we hypocrites?
No, I think we're just resigned. It's a concept called rational ignorance. We know we can't negotiate with Google. We know we can't use the service without agreeing, so we trade our privacy for convenience.
And that creates a massive data asymmetry.
It does. The companies know everything about us, and we know almost nothing about what they actually do with that data.
And this leads right into the concept of surveillance capitalism.
A term coined by the scholar Shoshana Zuboff. It describes an economic system where the product isn't the app you're using. The product is us. Our behavioral data is harvested, predicted, and then sold to advertisers who want to modify our behavior.
It creates what's called the chilling effect. I've even noticed this in my own life. If I'm searching for something medical or something political, I find myself hesitating. I think, do I really want this in my permanent record?
That is the chilling effect in action. When people know they're being watched, they conform. They start to avoid sensitive topics. It erodes intellectual freedom. If you think your boss or maybe your insurance company is watching your search history, you just act differently.
So how did the business environment respond to all this? Because the landscape in 2026 is very different than it was in 2016. The Wild West days are mostly over.
The sheriff came to town, and it turns out the sheriff was European. The gold standard for this is the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU.
The Europeans really went hard on this.
They fundamentally changed the philosophy. In the US, the default was always opt out. You can take my data unless I figure out how to tell you to stop. The GDPR flipped that completely to opt-in,
Right.
which means you cannot touch my data unless I explicitly say yes.
And there's the right to be forgotten.
Yes.
Hmm.
You can tell a company, delete me, and they must scrub you from their servers. If they don't, the fines are up to 4% of their global revenue.
Wow.
We're talking billions of dollars. By 2025, over 5 billion euros in fines had already been levied under that law.
That definitely gets a CFO's attention. But here in the U.S., we still have more of a patchwork, right?
It's a real headache for compliance officers. We have the CCPA and CPRA in California, which are very strict, almost like a GDPR light. Then you have Virginia, Colorado, Utah, Connecticut, all with their own slightly different laws.
So there isn't one federal law.
Not yet. There's still a massive struggle for a single federal law with a lot of debate around the ADPPA, the American Data Privacy and Protection Act.
So for a student who's about to enter the workforce, this means that compliance isn't just some boring department in the basement anymore. It's a strategic necessity.
Oh, absolutely. If you're building an app today, you have to adopt privacy by design. You don't build the app and then ask at the end, so how do we make this legal? You have to build the privacy protections into the architecture from day one.
What does that mean in practice?
Things like data minimization, don't collect data you don't actually need, and data retention, don't keep it any longer than you absolutely have to.
One of the best examples of this, and I love this because it shows the power of the consumer, is what Apple did a few years back with app tracking transparency.
That was a fascinating power move. Apple introduced a very simple pop-up on the iPhone. When you opened an app like Facebook or Instagram, it asked a simple question. Do you want this app to track your activity across other companies' apps and websites?
And it had two buttons, allow or ask app not to track.
That's it. Clear, simple English, no legalese.
And the result was just devastating for the ad industry, wasn't it?
It was. The vast majority of users, the stats vary, but they're often cited around 80 to 90% chose do not track.
We voted with our thumbs.
It proved that the privacy paradox isn't because people don't care about privacy, it's because they felt helpless. The moment you gave them a clear, simple button to protect their privacy, they smashed that button.
And that cost Meta something like $10 billion in revenue in a single year.
It completely shifted the power dynamic.
Yeah.
It showed that privacy can be a competitive advantage. Apple now sells privacy as a luxury product. Buy an iPhone and you are safe.
That is a powerful lesson for any marketers listening. Trust is a currency. If you abuse it, you will lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to our third pillar. We've talked about the algorithms, we've talked about the data. Now let's talk about access, because none of this matters if you aren't even online in the first place.
The digital divide.
There is a visual hook here that just haunts me. The Taco Bell vignette.
Salinas, California, 2020. This was the height of the pandemic. Schools were closed, everything was remote, and a photo went viral. It showed two young girls sitting on the concrete curb outside a Taco Bell.
Right.
They had their little school laptops open on their laps.
Why were they there?
Because Taco Bell has free Wi-Fi. And they didn't have internet at home. They were trying to go to school in a parking lot.
And this is in California, the home of Silicon Valley, the tech capital of the entire universe. And you have kids sitting on concrete just to get their education.
It highlighted a quote from a state legislator at the time who said, "The digital divide is as deep as ever." It just shattered that myth that everyone is connected now.
So let's break down this divide, because I think a lot of people just assume it means, rural areas don't have cables.
And that is one part of it. That's the infrastructure gap. About 95% of the U.S. has broadband availability, but that 5% that's left out are mostly rural areas and tribal lands. It's the classic last mile problem. It's just very expensive to run a fiber optic cable 5 miles for one farmhouse.
But infrastructure isn't the whole story. You can have a fiber line running right past your apartment building in the Bronx, but if you can't afford to plug into it.
That is the affordability gap. The stats are stark. 94% of households earning over $100,000 a year have broadband. But for households earning under $30,000, it drops to 54%.
Wow.
If the bill is $80 a month and you're choosing between food and internet, you choose food every time.
And what's the third pillar of the divide?
Skills. Digital literacy. This is the one that's often overlooked. You can give someone a laptop and a free connection, but if they don't know how to navigate the web safely, how to attach a PDF to an email, or how to use a telehealth portal, they're still on the wrong side of the divide.
We often call this the homework gap for kids, but it sounds like it's really a life gap.
It creates a vicious cycle of poverty. Just think about it. To apply for a job at McDonald's or Walmart today, you have to apply online.
Right. You can't just walk in with a paper resume anymore.
Exactly. So if you don't have the internet, you can't get the job. And if you can't get the job, you can't afford the internet.
And when you look at this globally, the numbers are even starker.
40% of the entire world is still offline. That is roughly 2.2 billion people. That's 2.2 billion minds locked out of the global economy and the global conversation.
So what are the solutions? Is this just a case of wait for Starlink to save us?
Well, Starlink and other low Earth orbit satellites are a huge part of the infrastructure solution for those really hard-to-reach places. But we also see policy solutions. The Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, in the U.S. was a major step. It's basically a subsidy to help low-income families pay their internet bill.
And there's a design element to this as well, tech equity.
Yes, and this is crucial for developers listening. Tech equity means designing with the marginalized in mind from the very beginning. It means thinking mobile first, because many low-income people rely entirely on a smartphone. They don't have a desktop.
Yeah.
It means building in accessibility for people with disabilities. It means offering multilingual support.
I like the distinction there between equality and equity. Equality is giving everyone a laptop. Equity is making sure that everyone has the bandwidth, the skills, and the power to actually use that laptop to improve their life.
That's it, exactly. If we don't close this gap, this fourth industrial revolution we're all so excited about, we'll just leave half the world behind.
All right, let's zoom out, way out. We're talking planetary scale now. Pillar 4, global sustainability.
Yeah.
We love the cloud. We love that our photos just sort of float up into the ether and are safe forever. But the cloud isn't a cloud, is it?
No. The cloud is a row of hot, noisy servers in a giant warehouse in Northern Virginia or the Nevada desert.
So let's talk about the environmental cost of a clear cloud.
Yeah.
This seems like a paradox. Tech is supposed to save the planet, right? Smart grids, electric vehicles, AI that optimizes logistics.
That is the promise. But the process of creating and running all that tech is incredibly resource intensive.
Okay, give me the stats on energy consumption.
Data centers currently account for about 2% of global electricity usage. Now, that sounds small, but it's on par with the entire aviation industry.
Wow.
And with the explosion of generative AI, which is incredibly power hungry, we're projecting that could jump to 8% by 2030.
Why is AI so hungry for power?
It's a two-phase problem, training and inference. Training a huge model like GPT-4 takes a massive amount of computational power, thousands of GPUs running full blast for months. It consumes gigawatt hours of energy.
And then there's using it.
Right. Then every time you ask it a question that's inference, it burns a little more power.
So every time I ask ChatGPT to write me a funny limerick about a cat, I'm burning a little bit of carbon.
In a tiny way, yes. And it all adds up. And it's not just electricity, it's water. These servers generate immense heat, and they need cooling. Google and Microsoft consume billions of gallons of water every year just to keep their data centers from melting down.
But the energy is only half the story. The other half is the physical stuff, the hardware, e-waste.
This is the real tragedy of the upgrade cycle. We are all conditioned to buy a new phone every 2 years, a new laptop every 3. What happens to the old one?
It goes in a drawer, and then eventually the trash.
And humanity generates roughly 62 million metric tons of e-waste every year. That's enough to fill a line of trucks that could stretch all the way around the equator. And the terrifying stat, only about 22% of it is formally recycled.
So where does the other 78% go?
A lot of it ends up in the global south. Places like Agbogblashi in Ghana, which for years was one of the world's largest digital dumping grounds. It is a genuine horror story. You see local workers, often children, taking old bundles of wires and just burning them.
Burning them? Why?
They burn the plastic coating off to get to the copper wire inside because copper is valuable, but burning PVC plastic releases dioxins, heavy metals, all kinds of toxic fumes. It poisons the soil, the water, and the lungs of the people who are forced to work there.
So our obsession with getting the newest iPhone is literally poisoning children in Ghana. That is a heavy realization.
It is, and that's not even counting the front end of the process, the resource extraction. We're mining cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo for our lithium-ion batteries.
Wow.
Much of that is artisanal mining people in dangerous holes in the ground, often involving child labor.
It feels hopeless when you frame it like that. But I know there's a business pivot here. This isn't just about feeling bad. There is an opportunity.
There's a massive opportunity. It's called the circular economy.
Explain that for the business students listening.
Okay, so the current model is linear. Take resources, make a product, dispose of the waste. The circular model is repair, reuse, recycle. You keep the materials in use for as long as possible.
So there's money in the trash.
Massive money. That 62 million tons of e-waste contains about $62 billion worth of gold, silver, copper, and rare earth metals. We are literally throwing gold into landfills.
So this idea of urban mining isn't just a buzzword.
No, it's a legitimate business model. Apple has a robot they call Daisy that can disassemble iPhones to recover the materials. The ultimate goal is to make new phones entirely out of old phones.
And we're seeing legislation pushing this along too, the right to repair movement.
Yes. New York, California, and the EU are all leading on this. For years, companies made it impossible to fix your own device. They'd use proprietary screws, glue batteries in, restrict access to parts. Right to repair laws force companies to provide manuals and parts to independent repair shops.
Which extends the life of the device. If I can fix my screen for $50, I don't need to go buy a new $1,000 phone.
Exactly. It might hurt short-term sales, but it builds long-term sustainability and customer loyalty.
And there's also green AI.
Right, the push for energy-efficient coding. Developers are now learning how to write code that uses less processing power to get the same result. And the big cloud providers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, are racing to power their data centers with 247 carbon-free energy. Nuclear, geothermal, wind. It's becoming a competitive advantage to be green.
Okay, so we have covered the problems. Bias, privacy, access, and sustainability. Now for the really big question. How do we steer this ship? We have to talk about governance.
And this is the core dilemma. Innovation moves at the speed of light. The law moves at the speed of a glacier.
It's the tortoise and the hare, but the hare is a quantum computer and the tortoise is a committee in Congress.
Exactly. And there is this huge philosophical debate happening globally on how to handle this mismatch.
Break down the two main philosophies for us.
On one side, you have permissionless innovation. This is the classic U.S. internet boom model. The philosophy is basically, innovation is good, regulation stifles it. Let people build whatever they want. If it causes harm, we'll fix it later.
Move fast and break things. Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Right. And it allows for incredibly rapid growth. It gave us the entire internet economy we have today, but the downside is you might break things like, say, democracy or privacy before you even realize what's happening.
So what's the other side?
The precautionary principle. This is more the European model. The idea is better safe than sorry. You have to prove that your new technology is safe before you are allowed to deploy it widely.
But that obviously slows things down. A lot.
It does. It can stifle innovation. Critics call it the Brussels effect. Lots of rules, but no big tech companies. So the world is looking for a middle ground, something called adaptive regulation.
I've heard the term sandboxes. I love this visual. Are we talking about a literal sandbox?
Sort of. A regulatory sandbox is a controlled environment. Let's say you're a new fintech company using AI. The government says, okay, the current laws don't really fit your product, so we'll let you test it on 10,000 customers under our strict supervision.
Right.
If it works and it's safe, we will change the rules to let you expand. If it breaks, we shut you down and contain the damage.
That seems like a really smart way to test, beta versions of society.
It is proving to be very effective. It allows for innovation without total anarchy.
We're also seeing local laws stepping up. You mentioned New York City's Local Law 144.
A pioneering piece of legislation. It requires that any company using AI for hiring in New York City must have that AI audited for bias by an independent third party, and they have to publish the results online.
Transparency.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
And at the federal level, we had the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights.
That came from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Now, it's not a binding law, but it sets the standard. It has 5 key principles.
What are they?
1, safe and effective systems. 2, algorithmic discrimination protections. 3, data privacy. 4, notice and explanation. You have to know when an AI is judging you. And 5, human alternatives, consideration, and fallback.
That last one, human fallback, that seems crucial. Just the ability to say, I want to talk to a real person.
Exactly. We cannot afford to lose the human in the loop.
And corporations are responding internally, too. It's not just about waiting for the government to step in. It's about creating ethics boards and doing red teaming.
Red teaming is a term from the military. It means you play the role of the enemy. In AI, you hire hackers and ethicists to actively attack your own system. You pay them to try to make your chatbot say something racist or to try to break the privacy filters.
So you want to find the flaws before the public does.
It's stress testing your ethics. And it's becoming an industry standard, supported by things like the NIST AI risk management framework.
Okay, let's unpack all this. We've gone from a white mask at MIT to a mountain of e-waste in Ghana, all the way through the halls of the EU Parliament and back to the server rooms.
It's a long journey, but everything is connected.
So what's the synthesis here? What does this all mean for the listener?
I think the key takeaway is that technology is not value neutral. It is not just a bunch of tools lying on a table. You know, a hammer is just a hammer, but an algorithm is a decision-making engine. Technology reflects the ethics of the people who build it and the laws that govern it.
It's a mirror.
It is. And for the students who are listening, the future business leaders, you have to remember you aren't just managing systems, you are managing the impact those systems have on society.
Right.
So when you're sitting in that meeting and someone proposes a new data harvesting tool because it will boost quarterly revenue by 0.5%,
But you know it violates user trust.
you have to be the one who raises your hand. You have to be the one to ask, is this fair? Is it private? Is it sustainable? Who is being left behind by this decision?
Because if you don't ask, the market won't ask for you.
And eventually the regulators or just a lot of angry customers will come knocking on your door.
So tie it all back to the hook for me. The white mask.
Don't build systems that require people to wear a white mask to be seen. It's that simple. Build systems that see everyone as they are. That is the fundamental challenge of the next decade.
That's powerful. It really shifts the burden from the user to the builder.
It is the responsibility that comes with power, and tech is power.
Well, now that we've looked at the ethics of today and all the messiness of the present, next time we're going to shift gears. We're going to be looking at tomorrow.
Chapter 10. Forecasting and foresight methods for anticipating change.
We'll learn how to predict the unpredictable, how to see around corners.
It's going to be fascinating. We'll get into things like Delphi methods, scenario planning, and how to spot a black swan event.
Before we go, if this deep dive gave you an aha moment, maybe it was the healthcare proxy or the simple tragedy of that Taco Bell story, share it with a classmate. Discuss it. Like, subscribe, and please check the description for those resources to help you ace your course.
Knowledge is always better when it's shared.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, a question for you to mull over as you walk to your next class or drive to work.
Here's the question. Imagine you are the project lead for the next big AI tool, the one that's going to define your career. You're weeks away from launch, and you discover a bias. It only affects 1% of users, but it affects them badly. Your biggest competitor is launching their product next week. If you delay your launch to fix the bias, you lose the first mover advantage and potentially millions of dollars. If you launch, you know you will hurt people. What do you do?
Speed or fairness? It's an easy question to answer now in the abstract. It's a lot harder when there's real money on the table and your boss is screaming at you.
Indeed. That is the test.
That's a wrap on this episode of Emerging Technologies and Innovation Strategy. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, every disruption starts with curiosity. Until next time, stay ahead of the curve.
Goodbye, everyone.